What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we are going to be doing another Godzilla vs Kong news and updates. So, a couple things here. Number one, starting out, I just want to say, because usually I get comments about it and I've already seen some confusion about it. Yeah, I did get a haircut back in August, but most of the videos you guys are watching currently that are being put out on the channel were recorded back in July or the very beginning of August. So you guys are all watching like older videos that I recorded, but I haven't edited. So I'm editing them and putting those out when I can, when school will allow it. The other thing that I gotta address is the fact that WMG, which is like, well, Warner Brothers record label or something like that, they really dislike my Godzilla vs Kong intro. So although all you guys really like it, they really don't like it, and so we are gonna have to wait and see what the verdict on that one is before I can use it again. So we're gonna have to do some alternate stuff with that, and that's why I can't use the traditional intro that I really like, and I know you guys really like it too, but I can't touch it. Also, the interview that we're breaking down here today from Adam Wingard, I believe it was recorded back in 2017. I don't know if it was posted back in 2017, but it didn't resurface until just like a month or two ago. So it's still kind of new. I mean, we've never covered this information on the channel before, and so that's why we're going to break down the interview. But it also is something that is older. A lot of these Adam Wingard interviews that are popping up all of a sudden now, he keeps talking about, yeah, we're in the process of making Death Note, and so you go, oh, wait a minute, this is back in 2017 that this was recorded. This is like older recorded stuff being put out way later, kind of like what I'm doing with my videos, where I'm recording them back in July and now I'm posting them now. So let's jump through this Adam Wingard interview. It's going to be a short little video here. We're just covering one interview today, and that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a series of these, catching up on the Adam Wingard interviews. I'm going to do them video by video rather than doing them all in one video, just for two reasons. Number one, that's less overwhelming for me. Number two, I can put out the videos more consistently that way. If I do it all at once, I edit it all, it takes forever, and then I put it out one time, and that's all I get out of it, you know? If I do it over time, it does give me a little more consistency and a little more peace of mind here now that I'm back in school and it's just busy all the time. So that's why I've chosen to do it the way I'm going to do it. All right, let's talk about the old interview from Adam Wingard. He starts out by talking about motion capture. He wants to continue the MonsterVerse trend of doing motion capture. I love that. I think that's a great idea. I really like that they did it for 2014, even though you couldn't really tell. They did it for 2014. They did it for 2019, made great use of it in 2019. And then they did it for Kong Skull Island as well, with Terry Notary and Toby Kibble, who played Kong. So he wants to do motion capture for Godzilla vs Kong. This is an interesting question because we don't know if they've actually done that. We know that he says they want to, but we don't know if they've done it. TJ Storm has maintained publicly that he has not done it. He has maintained that, oh, you know, I'll probably get the call down the line and do it, and that will probably be that. But I think that's an act. I don't think that's the truth. I feel like they have. Toby Kibble and Terry Notary have been silent on the issue, so we don't know if they have come back for Kong, but I feel like they've had to do the motion capture by now. The movie's too soon. It's going to come out in too short a time period to be still needing to do the motion capture. So I guarantee if they were going to do motion capture for Godzilla vs Kong, they've already done it. But anyways, he was talking about how they wanted to do motion capture for the movie. He also then goes on to debunk one of the popular fan theories floating around, which is the movie is called Godzilla vs Kong because Godzilla's gonna win, because every Godzilla movie that Godzilla's name comes first, he has to win. That's not true. Well, the argument is any versus movie where the name comes first, that is the character that wins if it's a kaiju movie, which isn't the case. Godzilla vs Biollante, Godzilla loses. They're right off the top of my head, that's the first one I think of. Godzilla loses in that movie. I'm not gonna sit here and like spend time trying to run through them all thinking about, oh yeah, does Godzilla one of these ones? Godzilla vs Mothra in the 90s? No, Godzilla loses again. And that one is called Godzilla vs Mothra. Mothra vs Godzilla is the 64 movie where Mothra wins. So no, yeah, that's not the case. It's not like a rule of thumb that every time a monster gets their name first in the credits because they're going to win. It's usually the case of the monster whose name comes first in the credits is the one who's top billed. They're more popular at that time. In this case, Godzilla's more popular at the time, so his name goes first. Also, Adam Wingard debunks the theory. There's no alternate meaning behind it. He just says the reason they do it is to avoid confusion with the 1962 film King Kong vs. Godzilla. They don't want it to be where you look up King Kong vs. Godzilla and you get the wrong movie popping up. They want it to be you're going to know the movie's called Godzilla vs. Kong. It's its own thing. That way you can look up Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla vs. Kong will come up rather than the 1962 King Kong vs. Godzilla. So that is why they have the name the way it is. There's no alternate meaning behind it. There's no weird conspiracy that Godzilla's gonna win because his name comes first and so he has to win. That's not how that works. He also says they started pre-visualization for the movie all the way back in 2017, so the fight scenes have been working on since 2017. They've been doing the special effects sequences since then, even before the movie started filming, even before they wrote the script for the movie, which is not all that unprecedented. King Kong 2005 did the same thing. I believe Godzilla King of the Monsters did as well. You start the visualization, you start the pre-vis first so that you can see how the fight works. You can test out the kinks in the mechanics of, well, if Kong is this big, how's the fight going to play out? That kind of thing. So you work all that out. And yeah, here it was the case. While they were working on the script for Godzilla vs. Kong, they were tweaking the script depending on how the animatics looked, depending on how the pre-vis worked with Godzilla and Kong fighting at their different sizes. Now, back in 2017, he says he spoke with Jordan Vogt Roberts about Kong, which of course we know has continued. They have continued to speak about Kong. I don't know how frequently, but they definitely have done consistently. So they have been talking with them about how to handle the character. He also says back then he had very little to no contact with Michael Dougherty, who worked on King of the Monsters, so he didn't have much contact with Dougherty. We know since then that has changed. The MonsterVerse directors have all united since then, and so there has been kind of a passing of the torch and sharing of ideas amongst them, and they can learn from each other. So Wingard talks about how Kong has developed over time and how he spent a lot of time, he spent all of his life on the island. A lot of time has passed between 1970 and now, so he has been in constant fights. The island is just, it's crazy. So apparently Kong has been constantly fighting, and he finally got the island to a point where it's kind of cooled down, as indicated by the novelization, where he hasn't really had to fight in a little bit, and so he's coming out of retirement once Ghidorah does his alpha call, which of course Wingard can't get into that back in the 2017 interview. That's just what we know with what he said, coupling that with what we have in canon. Yeah, he says Kong's been in constant fights, so he's had to fight his whole life. He has continued to fight all the way up until 2020, so he will be very hardened by the time he gets to Godzilla vs. Kong. He's not going to be confused or whatever. He's going to know exactly how to fight. He's going to know how to handle a situation. It's going to be a great advantage for Kong. Godzilla's had thousands of years off. Godzilla's been out of practice for thousands of years, finally got back into it with the Mutos, got his butt kicked a lot, and then he beat the Mutos, then fought Ghidorah, got his butt kicked quite a bit again, and then he beats Ghidorah as well. So Godzilla's been a little bit sporadic with how much he fights. He hasn't been consistently fighting the way Kong has, and so although I don't know how much fighting experience Godzilla has prior, he may have a lot. Godzilla may have way more fighting experience than Kong because he's thousands of years old. We know that Kong has had more practice currently, so Kong is going to be a little bit more of a weathered fighter currently, whereas Godzilla is going to be almost, in this case, the character coming out of retirement, even though that's kind of opposite. Godzilla's been fighting recently, whereas Kong's been fighting consistently, and at this point Kong's coming out of retirement to hunt the skull crawlers. Wingard says he watched every Godzilla movie there is in order to prep for Godzilla vs. Kong. I don't know why he makes that such a big emphasis, because he's like, well, I haven't seen all the Kong movies yet, which upsets me for the reason of, it's like, well, again, it's almost like no one gives Kong the respect he deserves nowadays, which always pisses me off. It's like, I don't know why people put Godzilla on this pedestal. They're equal. They're both great. I'm not gonna read too much into that because this was back in 2017. Had he said that now, I would take issue with it. He says that back in 2017, so it's like, sure, that doesn't really matter to me. He's had years to watch all the Kong movies. There's not that many. There's like 8 of them. He said years to watch all the Kong movies. I believe in him. I believe that he can. So he's probably caught up on the Kong movies. Like I said, there's 8 compared to 35, so he's not that far behind in Kong. He says he watched most of the King Kong movies though before he started working on and finished Death Note. So like I said, he's had lots of time to revisit each franchise between this interview and now, and so I don't think that's a big issue that he didn't revisit all the Kong movies before starting the script for Godzilla vs. Kong. Godzilla's got a much longer, richer history, whereas Kong, if you've seen one movie, you've seen 3 almost. You know what I'm saying? If you've seen the original, you know how the 76 movie goes, and you know how the 2005 movie goes, and the few alternate versions, you know a lot about those as well, because Kong typically sticks to a fairly consistent story from movie to movie, whereas Godzilla is just vastly different from movie to movie. The final little bit of information we learned from this interview is that Wingard says he really wanted to make us empathize with the monsters on a much deeper level, so they're giving a lot more emotional ties to the monsters in this movie, and he wants it to be a very emotional movie from the monsters' perspective. So I'm sure Kong is going to go through a lot of trauma at the start of the movie, as I've been talking about on the channel for a while now. I think Godzilla is going to either cross a line and it's going to really traumatize Kong, and that's why they're going to fight, or I think King Ghidorah, when he woke up all the Titans, he wound up doing something that really ruined things for Kong, really put Kong through a lot of trauma and stress, and that is why Kong is going to be irritable enough to fight Godzilla in 2020, whereas previously, as we learned in the King of the Monsters novelization, Kong just doesn't want anything to do with Godzilla. He just doesn't want anything to do with any monsters that aren't his island. He just cares about his island. If his island is ruined, he's going to blame the alpha that let that happen, that being Godzilla in this instance. So I think there's a lot of good opportunity there. I like the idea of having the monsters at the forefront of the story as characters. It's always great where the Gargantuas does that, King Kong vs. Godzilla, the original, does that. All of the movies that have the monster at the forefront and as characters, those are typically the ones that have the best kaiju stories. So I'm very glad to hear that going into Godzilla vs. Kong 2020. And that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys next time for whatever I make next. I don't actually know when this video is coming out. This video could come out in October. I've got no idea because I can't see how my schedule works out. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. D-Man out.